We were in negotiations.
Investing in real estate.
They're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I am your host, Kevin Amos. This podcast is different than anything I have seen, where we not only help real estate investors, but we help real estate creators and the content behind that investment. So we want to help more real estate investors and more real estate influencers build their wealth. I hope you love the episode. If you do, and even if you don't, please do me a favor. We're trying to build this thing. Give me a 5-star review and share it with your friend. I am excited to introduce one of our leaders in Pine Financial Group, our Chief Strategy Officer. So lucky to have you. What's up, Brandon?
What's up, Kevin? This is awesome. I'm super excited to do this. I think this is going to be fantastic, and what a great resource for everybody. This is going to be so cool. So like Kevin said, hit that like or subscribe button, and let's get some interest on this thing.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you, and I want to get into your story here. So Brandon McKnight, you and I met in 2020, right before COVID, and we were looking for a leader in our organization, a new executive to help get us further and get us growing. And it was an interesting story because, and I'll let you share your side of it, but you turned me down. You didn't want to join at that time. Made me a little sad, Brandon, to be quite honest with you, because I just loved you and your background. You got a lot of experience in real estate and managing teams and people. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, take us back. Who are you? Who's Brandon?
Yeah. So I would really start with, I guess, who am I at my core, right? I'm a father of 2 and a husband to my wonderful wife, Megan. That is part of my makeup. That is part of my DNA, and it comes through in everything I do. In terms of professionally, I've had a really varied career. I actually, coming out of college, it was 2001, right after 9/11, and was looking for a job. Couldn't find anything. I thought I was going to be an investment banker, and ended up working for Wells Fargo Financial, which is no longer in business. We did subprime loans. So we would originate the loans, we'd close the loans, we'd even notarize the loans. And you kind of don't wonder why they're not around anymore, because a lot of that stuff was a little weird. But it was actually a great educational experience for me. What we would do is we would take, leads that came in through financing terms, and we'd call them and we'd sell them a loan or a mortgage or whatever it was, a credit card. And that really kicked off my career. From there, I did a bunch of different things. I ended up going back to law school, realized I wasn't happy in my career at Wells Fargo and felt like I wanted to do something different, and went to law school. Immediately realized I didn't love that either. But at that point, I think my parents are sick of me saying I don't love something. So it was like, you got to stick through it. You got to see it through and just be done with it. So ended up staying in law school, finished my degree, graduated, ended up meeting my wife. Her father had just bought a company. And so he had a sign company. So I was selling signs, commercial real estate signs. Literally, I would drive around, call real estate developers and see if they would use us for their signage needs. Did that for a couple of years. The funny thing about that, Kevin, is I remember when I started, I thought, this is the last job I'll ever have. Like, my father-in-law owns the company. I'll do this for the rest of my career. This is going to be great. Very naive of me. That company didn't work out. He ended up closing it. Nothing like getting fired by your father-in-law because he can't fund the business anymore, but learned a ton. It actually really introduced me to being an entrepreneur, fell in love with it. And so from that business, ended up going to work for a friend who was scraping the public trustee site here locally. And they were doing that to go do their own fix and flips. They did like 200 to 300 over a course of 2 or 3 years, and they just needed somebody to come on board because they wanted to turn the tool that they were using to scrape the websites into a actual application you could log into. So at the time, it was called IronScope, and I'm sure you and I ran across each other at some point, because I used to go to like all the real estate investment groups, and we were trying to get people to buy subscriptions to this website. And I did that for a couple of years. We got some seed funding from a private equity group in town, did that, and ended up, we weren't able to make a run of it. Didn't have any success in terms of growing the revenue. And that really just, at that point, I was into real estate, fell in love with it, ended up going over to a company called PMH Financial. And PMH was an REO asset management company. And I actually joined them as the vice president of internet marketing. And that was a long time ago. This was 11 years ago, and internet marketing wasn't even a thing. I remember going into like hand people my business cards. They're like, "What is this? Like, what are you talking about?
What's
What is
the
internet?"
internet?
Exactly. But it was cool because we would generate leads for real estate agents and things like that. We were trying to help a lot of the people that would manage the REO assets we had, and we were trying to help them generate new business. So did that for a couple of years, ended up being responsible for the loan file review division. So that encompassed a couple different aspects of Stewart Lender Services, who had bought PMH. We did loan file review. That included, basically any kind of underwriting due diligence, servicing QC. We would do the REO asset management piece, as I talked about, and then we had a capital markets piece. So we're basically bulk selling portfolios, and we would re-underwrite the loans to make sure that they met the buyer's criteria. And that was an awesome experience, wild ride. And 3 years, I went from my largest operation being 20 people at IronScope to I now had 300 people in 2 offices, both here in Detroit. And then I got an opportunity to go work for a company called Promontory Risk. They were starting an outsourcing arm of their advisory team. And so they had two components to the business. We did some anti-money laundering work, and then we did some servicing work. So once again, that servicing compliance, and did that for 7 years. And that's actually where I met you. At the time I was with IBM, who had bought Promontory. And, I got to tell you, Kevin, I regretted, I regret to this day not saying yes to you sooner. But my wife always tells me, listen, you had some lessons to be learned before you were actually ready to make the jump. And so it's all worked out in the end. And joined you guys here in August, ended up taking over our investor relations, our marketing team, and, just plugging in wherever I can help out. So it's been an awesome ride and wild career. I would have never been able to script it out by any means.
Yeah, I want to. There's a lot I want to dig into
Yeah.
here, Brandon. But so the rejection I felt in 2020, and you decided to leave IBM anyway. Like,
Right.
so I was trying to pull you from them,
Right.
and I felt I had a solution to all of your gripe, and
You did.
like we could do this thing together. And so from 2020, you left IBM
Yeah.
anyway, and then you went
Yeah.
to another
Yeah.
company that gave you even more experience in real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad you touched on that thread. So I kind of like blacked that period out because it's like it was crazy. So for all the listeners out there, I always tell people I had a couple cups of coffee at two other stops before I got here. It's always easier to say I went from IBM to here, but to Kevin's point, actually the first stop I went to Cherry Creek Mortgage, and they were building a company called Found It. And the idea was they wanted to go direct to consumer for all of their relationships. Like the idea was to say, hey, we're a mortgage company, but we would love to own the relationship with you, from searching on the website to try and find a property. So we had internal CSRs making phone calls if you'd save a search on our website, to getting property insurance with us, to doing your title work, to funding your loan. The idea was we were going to own the relationship stem to stern, and try and build a business around that. I was with them literally for like 2 to 3 months. Got a call from another real estate opportunity. A guy reached out to me, and they were doing tax lien sales. So they are the source for actually, posting those tax lien notices, doing the due diligence to make sure that we would reach out to potential interested parties and give them a notification that this property was going to be sold at auction. And ended up doing that for, man, I was maybe 4 or 5 months, and just realized for me, it wasn't necessarily the right fit. The owner of that business had a clear path of where he wanted to take it. I also recognized that my life at that point that I was looking for something different. One of the things I love about working with you, Kevin, is you are totally up to like, hey, if you have an idea, let's do it. That previous experience was very much, I know the best way to do it. Let's just do it that way. And that's not really who I am, right? Like, we're here to learn and grow. And that's why I'm super excited to be on the show, because I think there's things that I can learn, right? Here I am at 43 years old, And I'm learning more about real estate at this stage of my life than I've done through all these other stops, right? Like I've been through a ton of different real estate stops and I'm still learning like, oh, I had no idea that that's how that works, right? So pretty cool. But the tax lien piece is very interesting. It's a fascinating business to be in.
Yeah, and maybe we could dig in there, but you said something that I find interesting, and I've found this with other people that we've worked with and hired and team members, like realtors, I mean, for some reason, real estate agents and licensed people really are attracted. And they always tell me like, even in our classes, I learned so much more from you than I did in all of this real estate school that I had to go and pass a test for.
Right.
It's just such a the industry that we work in is so different than anything else that's really out there.
Oh, totally. And I think we get to see so many different types of deals that it's like there's always something new. There's some nuance to it, right? I think that a lot of times people have this feeling that real estate is just very plain and simple. And I think that like on this end of the business, it is really not, right? I think having started my career at Wells Fargo, where this is going to probably make some people laugh. I remember our underwriting criteria was like an approval came from just your manager, and it was like, does this look good? And you'd be like, yeah, it's fine. Whereas like, here we are today, and there's all these different variables that we look at. I know in this business, we're looking at the deal more specifically in the way in which people structure the deal, the financing terms, their exit strategy. We're seeing the full facet of it, right? We get to touch every aspect of it. And it's just so interesting to me, and the creative ways that people get these deals done, and looking at a deal to say, hey, does this make sense? And it's like we see so many that come our way that it's just an awesome opportunity to just be in the middle of all of that.
Yeah, and I was talking to Coop earlier, one of our loan officers, and he was telling me how he helped a client restructure a deal to be more profitable and make it to be something that we want to fund.
Yeah.
And to have a team member or trusted advisor like what we provide to our clients to help you structure a deal and mentor you through it. I mean, that's really what this is about. I mean, this podcast is about helping people.
Yeah.
Like how do the educators that are out there, the influencers that are out there, help their people? And that's a great example. And we live that.
Yep, absolutely. And I would say like my end of the business, obviously, I guess for people who don't know, me being in charge of investor relations, I'm on the phone with a lot of our investors in our passive fund, these are people, more often than not, they're like, hey, I've done some fix and flips. I would like to do some other investment vehicle that's not your traditional stocks, bonds, whatever it is. And so we raise money around, providing people an 8% return by investing in our fund 5. And that's an investment vehicle that like, I can't tell you, Kevin, how many times I talk to people and they're like, I never thought about that. Right. And as soon as I start telling them, the benefits of it, they're like, well, interesting. So wait, I can get 8%. I don't have a lockup period. And then I explained the business model, right? Super simple. We borrow money at 8% from private investors. We turn back around, we lend it out at 12 to 13%. So it's not like, this isn't rocket science. This isn't like guessing at the stock market where you're like, oh, the valuation came in great. What's crazy right now in the market is like, we get good news and the market goes down, right? And it's like, hey, unemployment's low. And people are like, whoop, going down. Right?
I love it. I mean, for the people who aren't watching the video, I'm like, got a big old smile on my face and I'm like nodding in agreement because everything you're saying is so true.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we talked to Jared and Jared's a COO. We talked to him and he says, oh, this isn't simple. This isn't simple. And you and I are like, dude, we borrow at 8, we lend at 12. This is so simple. Everyone wins.
Exactly. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, well, let me explain first the core of the business. And once they get that, they're like, oh yeah, I see how this could be a good investment, right? You're just playing in that space. So it's pretty funny.
It's so funny. Now, clearly there's more to it. We are very careful with the underwriting and the servicing and all that, but
yeah,
at a macro level, it's pretty simple. So you and I agree on that. It just cracks me up because Jared's like, nope, not simple.
Nope, it's super complex. I love it.
The Real Estate Educators Podcast is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial Group is a private lender specializing in value-add bridge lending for real estate investors. This is accomplished by raising private money from individual investors and lending that money out in short-term real estate loans. Pine operates one of the coolest public mortgage funds on the market because it brings consistency and security to your investment portfolio without giving up on returns. The fund pays its investors a flat 8% return with monthly distributions. There is a low minimum investment and no lockup period. That's right. You can request all of your money back at any time without any fees. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with the Pine Financial Group Public Fund PFG Fund 5. Find out more at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. All right, I want to ask you about the Wells Fargo thing because this is something I find very interesting. So you worked in the subprime back before the crash, and it was really high pressure sales environment, and clearly that didn't work because, well, they're not here. Pine Financial and a lot of the listeners on here, we really focus on adding value to our clients. There's really no high pressure selling at all. So tell me compare a little bit about your experience at Wells Fargo compared to an environment where it's like, hey, you can work with us or not. There's no pressure.
Yeah.
What's the contrast there? Like, how's that?
Yeah. That's one of the things I love. One of the things when I always talk to investors and we start talking about this investment, one of the first things I tell them is, I'm not trying to sell you. This is either an investment option that works for you or not. Well, when I was with Wells Fargo, so we had metrics that were like, they could see how many calls I made that week. We would do these things called power hours. So you'd lock yourself in this little private booth and you'd spend an hour just making phone calls, right? And to the point where I remember I first started, I had this manager walk up and I'm staring at the phone, right? You're young in your career. I'm probably 22 at the time. And he sees me staring at the phone. He starts dialing because he's like, you're staring at it. What are you doing? Like, you just need to start making phone calls. And so, Kevin, I would get like hung up on because these are people who went to a furniture store, got a credit card. And here I am, 22-year-old Brandon McKnight, trying to pitch them on a whole mortgage, right? Hey, I'm going to refinance your property. And it was a lot to take in. Whereas that's not our strategy. This is truly here at Pine. We look at it as, this is a partnership. So whenever somebody does invest with us, I always tell them, thank you for the partnership. We view ourselves, I shouldn't say view, we, take on the responsibility of being a fiduciary for our investors, and we want to make sound investments. And so we really want to make this right for everybody. And the fact that you and I talked about this, we'll tell people, no, hey, if this isn't a good investment for you, or you need the liquidity, you need that cash back right away, it's probably not the right investment. But if you have cash parked somewhere and you want to earn more than just your very minimal interest from the bank, then this is a great place for you. And I think that's what's fantastic about it. We also like help people just diversify. So, it's night and day. I was a great learning experience. I would tell everybody in their career to be involved in sales is a phenomenal experience. It teaches you a lot about yourself, humbles you, and there's nothing like dialing for dollars. Get over a lot of fear. You realize have to tell yourself a story like, okay, this is not Brandon McKnight they're rejecting. They're rejecting the offer that I have to sell, and that's okay. But it was a great experience. I think height of that, Kevin, this is for the listeners out there. I refinanced a lady in 2002 probably 4 times in 3 or 4 months. Took out like 30 grand to pop on her house. I'm convinced myself that I felt bad the last time I was doing it, but we had these goals that you had to hit. And you'd get ranked on a chart and it would say top salesperson for the month. And you'd get that report. And if your name was at the bottom, you were going to be put on a performance improvement plan, right? That's just how it works. So, valuable experience, but totally different environment here.
Gosh, it's just terrible when I hear you say that. I just feel terrible. Like you have to go home at night knowing that you maybe didn't do the best thing for your client, and that was the expectation. That's the extreme. I don't think anybody listening to this would feel that way. We, for the most part, believe like we will benefit if we provide enough value to our clients. And so that's why we do this. That's why we do this podcast, why we do our YouTube channel, our classes, the Success Summit, all of these things. We just want to help people succeed. And if we can go along for the ride, that's what we're looking for.
I think it's such a core part of our DNA. We truly believe one of the things that I love about having come here is the fact that, our winning means that our investors won, right? They have a sound investment that they're in. Our borrowers, our fix and flip investors, they're winning, they're making money, they're growing their real estate portfolio. And then we as a company also succeed. And that last leg of that is I want to make sure our employees, our staff, they succeed. I want them to grow in their careers. I want them to better understand real estate. So, it truly is a part of who we are. And I just love that coming to work every day is easy when that's your company mantra and that's how you behave yourself, right?
Yeah, we really are improving lives. Okay, so let's get into the marketing stuff a little bit. We don't have a
Yeah.
ton of time here. So Iron Scope didn't work out so well. Is that
No.
because it wasn't getting enough clients, I assume?
Yeah. So one of the things that we realized early on is I started selling a subscription to that website. And so I was hitting up all the public trustee auctions, right? I'm walking around, I'm selling subscriptions. That wasn't a big group of people, right? Like that was a group of, probably had like the same 20 to 30 people were at each of those auctions. So like, in 2 weeks, I had hit up the whole database of people that we thought would want it. And then we were trying to sell it to real estate agents. Well, the mistake we made is that, a lot of real estate agents, and I don't want to be too general here, but it's like, the majority of the real estate agents, do it because they know somebody and they want to sell their house, or it's like a passive way to make money. They're not cold calling, dialing for dollars. That's not like, that wasn't part of their strategy to say, oh, here are all these homes that are in pre-foreclosure. I should go get that as a listing, right? Like that totally different, situation there. And so one of the big things we learned is I would say the people we were selling that subscription to wasn't a wide enough or deep enough pool. In hindsight, what I know now about websites and things like that, we should have given the site away, let people just have access to it, get users on it, and get people's feedback to say, hey, I just love being on the site. There's value in that. So those are one of the things that I learned early on in my career. Is like we had the wrong mentality. We were chasing $20 subscriptions when the true value would have been just eyeballs on the website and the amount of foreclosures we had, because we had probably like 60% of the US on the site at one point. And it was crazy. We had spent a bunch of money to do that, but only this small population of people had access to it.
Oh, so crazy. All these times we've talked about this, I've never thought about this, but you're right. The eyeballs, whether you get a subscription or not, you could still monetize that with advertising on the.
Yep. And we didn't
So,
even do it. And it's like,
wow.
so the guys we started that business with, I always tell them like, how foolish were we? A couple of 25-year-olds that were like wrong focus. So, I think that's for the value there, people should always take a step back and look at what are you really trying to achieve? And is that the right focus? And be really like, it's taught me, I've made myself very self-aware of like, just because you have strong convictions about a path you're on doesn't always mean it's the right path. So be critical of yourself, right? Think about what the opportunity really is and focus on that.
So interesting. And you had a competitor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're recording this from Colorado. We're right outside of Denver. And the competitor was a company called Renav,
Mm-hmm.
who I know the owners of pretty well, or they were the owners. I think he got out, but they had a different philosophy on marketing their software than you guys did. I saw them at lots of conferences speaking. I saw them doing classes. I saw them providing value to their clients as far as education and content, which is what we're talking about here. Did you guys do any of that?
No, none of it. I mean, we hired a salesperson. We were trying to sell to investment groups. We did some work with title companies, but their strategy at Renav was awesome. And the funny thing is, I remember seeing them all the time at the auctions, and I was kind of like, our website, our platform is so much better. Like it's like the old, VHS versus Betamax scenario. Like we had probably we had a higher quality product in my opinion, but we didn't do it the right way. And to your point, it wasn't about education. It wasn't about value. And that goes back to my point of we should have just made the site free because, just looking at it from that standpoint, you would have created inherent value in the website in that data versus trying to sell a $20 subscription. So, we were marketing to people, but not the right way and not a good way to generate enough interest.
Yeah, too much focus on the quality of the product and not enough on
Yeah.
the buyer. Like no one
Yep.
would say McDonald's has the best hamburger, right? But they sure
Yeah.
sell the most of them.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it.
So you weren't doing the education. Renav continued on. You guys went out of business. So here we are at the content creation and the classes and providing value first. So now you're at Pine and you're running the marketing department. And you know that we have a strong opinion on that. And we do the majority of our marketing in content creation. So we're content marketers basically, right?
Sure.
Which is exactly what we're doing right here.
But
That's exactly what this is. So tell us a little bit about our marketing department and what we
yeah,
focus on and what we're doing there.
yeah. So, part of our approach with marketing is, like you said, it is content creation, right? It's value add. So ironically, right, here we are as value added lenders. That's how we feel about marketing ourselves, right? How do we give you more value that we generate interest? So much of what we do is centered around educational. Like we have our LOs teach classes from a marketing perspective. It's all about the events or educational tools that we put on. It's our YouTube channel. It's this podcast. It's all of those things. And Callie, our marketing manager, does a great job of really keeping that at the forefront of what we're trying to do. She always challenges us to say, what are we trying to teach, right? What are we trying to, what's the goal of this, right? And so you really have to hone in on that messaging to say, okay, are we doing this in a self-serving manner or is it actually for the benefit of others? And the goal is always making sure that people find value in whatever we're producing and not just, pushing stuff out to push stuff out. So you're not seeing us spend a bunch of money. I have not come to you, Kevin, and said, hey, I want to spend a bunch of money at this conference and we just want a booth. That's not really our MO, right? I will come to you and say, we want to host an event, right? And we want
Yeah.
people to come to one of our classes. We think that that's a great forum for it. And so, Callie's great at looking at all that stuff. And then we have our regular content drip. So for anybody who's subscribed to this or any of our other channels, we're consistent, right? The whole goal is to make sure that you can rely on that content being out there. And it's why we build a library of all these things on our website. Go take a look. It's all about the tools you can get access to for free. And then we give you something every week to just say, hey, here's something else. Have you thought about this? So pretty cool. I love it. It doesn't feel like your traditional marketing in a sense of, hey, I just want to promote a brand and, we're just going to do that however it works. Now we have a very dedicated and focused approach to saying we're going to give you something of value so that you
Yeah.
want it, right?
And I learned this early on. Gosh, it was maybe even right before I started Pine. I was still working with Susan at the time. She was mentoring me in the private money lending business. And I was so focused, Brandon, on getting the next deal, similar to your experience at Wells Fargo, except for the pressure wasn't coming from a boss. It was coming from like trying to protect my family and put food on the table and a shelter, and so
Yeah.
it was just, I got to close a deal. I need that commission. I need that commission. I need that commission. And a lot of people find themselves stuck in that world.
Yeah.
Salespeople do, right? Because I really need that transaction. But what I learned was when I was able to shift my focus from myself to my client, I just started making way more money. It
Yeah.
was crazy. So I would tell someone, I'm sorry, I can't do the deal for you because you're not going to make money on it. I
Yeah.
would be the only one that makes money if I do this deal. And
Yeah.
I'm just not willing to do that anymore. Once that shift happened, I'm telling you that changed everything for me. And so that's kind of why we built Pine the way
Yeah.
we have. And so for those of you that go to the website and get the free resources or go to the YouTube channel and watch the videos, please know that we would love to do business with you. We would love to invest with you, earn that 8%. We would love to do a loan with you, but we really, more than that, want you to be successful. I want to ask you about maybe one specific thing that we do.
Sure.
We talked to Jared a little bit, we talked to Coop, but our favorite event, what we do, we love, we get the most value from, is an annual event in Minnesota and Colorado. It's the largest of its kind in either market. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the Investor Success Summit, right? What a great opportunity where we put on for local investors in those markets, Colorado and Minnesota, where it's just tons of information about how to get started in this business. Kevin, one of the things we've talked about over the years, right, is just, the value that you get when you invest in real estate, right? It is a transforming tool to create wealth. And one of the things I told you when I, said I wanted to come work here, said I want to create wealth. And real estate is one of the best ways to do that. And so the Investor Success Summit is all centered around that. How do you get started, right? Like, what are the questions you have? We even do some information on the market if that's making you nervous. We cover it stem to stern. I mean, anything from what not to do on your first fix and flip to what's the right structure to set up for my children and a family trust and all these things. I mean, those are two different ends of the spectrum from where you're at. But we think it's all relevant and we do it. It's an all-day event. And I had a blast going, this year and attending that event. It was super motivational. One of the things I feel like I personally took out of this is, I grew up in a family that had rental portfolios and I talked them into selling them. I'm now kicking myself. But it's, really getting into that space and encouraging people to do it. And so if you're looking to, dip your toe into the water, better understand how to get started, the Investor Success Summit is fantastic. And then if you're an experienced investor and you're like, hey, you want to talk to some other people who are really doing a lot of different deals, see different structures, get great education, market awareness, the Success Summit is just fantastic for that. And I'm super excited for the one this year and, excited to be a bigger part of it. Last year, I was on the sidelines, just working the back room and helping people get situated. So looking forward to it this year.
Yeah, and we get a lot of value from this. We get a lot of people that show up if they're new to us and we haven't met them before. We get their email address. And of course, we talk a lot on this channel about building that database and how valuable that is. So doing an event like that, even partnering with other people to help create that. When we started this thing, we had two partners, the owner of Your Castle and his name was John Fisher. There's a fantastic breakfast club that is in his legacy, still going strong in Denver. But it was those two and me that started that thing. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So I encourage you, if you're out there creating content, to team up and share your list, share your database, and then everybody can benefit. So that's how that got started. And Brandon, now we're doing it every year. It's the biggest event of the year in each of the markets. And it's a blast.
Love it. And that's, similar to this podcast, right? It's all about education. So that as much as you can educate yourself, people, I think that I mentioned earlier, I'm 43. I've learned more about real estate in the last couple of months than I probably had in a long time. Understanding different aspects of it, I just think that's fantastic. And I don't know about people out there, but I'm a lifelong learner. I love, one of the things that we challenge each other to do is read one book every quarter to just focus on yourself. It's all about growing your own mind, spirit, body, and soul, all that stuff, right? I'm a big believer in it. So I love the fact that we're doing this podcast. I think it's going to be fantastic.
I got one more question. So I'm going to start asking a little random question of all of the guests that come on the show, totally out of the blue, something you haven't expected, you're not expecting. Okay. But what I've found is successful people like you typically have a morning routine, something that they do pretty much every single day. I know the most successful people that I know, friends and mentors and all that, all have that. So walk me through your routine.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in this. I have a business coach. I've had one for a couple of years. And one of the things that he really was pushing me to do when I first started working with him is, to get your mind right to start a day. So I get up pretty early in the morning, but I spend probably the first 20 to 30 minutes doing a couple different things. So one, I actually pray and say thanks for everything that I've been given. I think it's just a phenomenal thing. And I think about my wife and kids and how awesome that is. And then I spend some time in thought. I do a lot of reflecting on, who I am and how I can get better. And I'm very critical of decision making. Hey, I could have done that better yesterday. How do I get better today? What are things that are on my plate that I need to get off? And so I'll spend, like I said, the routine really is get up early, spend a little time in prayer, sometime probably 10 to 20 minutes and just thought. And then I end it with actually positive affirmations. That's something I actually had been missing. And then I joined Pine and heard Coop say that. And it was like, yeah, let's get the day started on the positive foot of saying, what are all the great things that I'm going to will into existence today? So I'll do that. I've run through a list. I count them on my hands to make sure I do all of those things to make sure that today is going to be awesome. And right, that's what I always end with is today will be a great day. And I say it 5 times and I do that for each one of the affirmations.
Dude, I got chills just hearing you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you were doing that. We do talk about the power of the law of attraction, the power of positive thinking. And we talk about that kind of stuff in this office. We all believe that. So that's really cool to hear that you're doing that. I guess we're going to have to wrap up here. We're running short on time. I really appreciate you coming on the show, the newer show, and we're going to have you back because I want to dig into that morning routine a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the gratitude exercise and some of the benefits that you experience from that, and I want to hear more about what's the last company with the foreclosures and the tax liens, CivicSource, and I want to hear more about that. And then we want to dig into a little bit more about our YouTube channel and that kind of thing, and what you and Callie are working on. So let's have you back on when we get some time. But I really appreciate you coming on. Is there any last words?
Yeah, I just want to say, for anybody out there listening, we're super excited. We always want your feedback. So, give us topics you want us to cover. We're open to that too. And I just want to say thanks for having me on the show, Kevin, and thanks for hiring me. First of all, I probably should have started with that. So, I appreciate it. Right.
Thanks for finally saying yes, dude.
Absolutely.
No, you're great. So I appreciate you, and we'll check you later.
All right. Talk to you later. Thanks.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.